been waiting for you.
Alan, you were having a nightmare.
That's the last thing we want to do. We don't want to scare anybody.
Don't you understand? You're a machine, Alan, a mechanical device. Is that straight enough for you?
I read you loud and clear.
Alan, you idiot.
Hey, welcome to Green Crush. It's 2018 to some people and 6,000 some hundred and some other else to some other folks. And I don't know, the Mayans were gone in 2012 or so their calendar went. Welcome to a brand new season. It's not really brand new. It's still crummy and snowy out here in Toronto. It's a brand new season of Green Crush. What is Green Crush? Green Crush is... the green is the cannabis, the crush is what it did to my cancer, and also what I'm trying to do to these laws and regulations that prevent your access to it. Because of what it can do for cancer, and because of what it can do for other illnesses. And I don't give a shit about what the FDA says I can say or can't say when I'm saying what I'm saying is true. So you can get on that and figure it out. Tell the truth about something long enough, if they're going to hold you up on the stand at some point, you're going to have to answer to it, and I'm ready. So tell me all about how I can't promote this, Canada. Tell me all about how it's illegal to make it seem attractive while you ponder stretching out your alcohol drinking hours to 4 o'clock in the morning if there's a soccer team that wants to win some championship or some kind of special occasion where it's all of a sudden okay to extend drinking hours, but still cannabis is dangerous and we're going to arrest you for it. So I'm just trying to throw a little green shine on the fact that we don't need to swallow these kinds of things. These laws are meant to be changed or struck down or shat upon or gotten rid of in some way, shape, or form. And the more informed we are, the easier that is to do. So, for this episode, we are calling this one. We've had episodes. We've had some great episodes last year, starting in. Let's do a little recap of the year. I was interviewed on this at this very position in this seat at this table back in May on the Mike Richards show. Raw Mike Richards. Check out Raw Mike Richards. Great stuff. Every day he gets to talk to people every day and talk about things that are cool every day. And he gets to say fuck whenever he needs to because it's not run by, broadcasting empires other than Eggplant Digital Media. Eggplant Digital Media, a creation of Eggplant Digital Media. And so these are the folks that were able to put the Mike Richards show on the air, Mike being a fantastic sports broadcaster for years. And then he was stricken by cancer. And he's got an incredibly powerful story and has also been able to turn his cancer around into a broadcasting venture such as he wanted to tell it and as he wants to bring it. And he talks to a lot of cool people. And we have Russell here who works on that show as well. How's it going, Russell? Good. Russell says he is good. He knows because he's here for both Mike's show and my show. And there are other shows here at Eggplant Digital Media. Check us out at 234 King Street East in Toronto, right around Sherbourne, near the famous Toronto St. Lawrence Market, where you'll soon be able to buy cannabis at an LCBO kind of store across the street in a gray little box that you have to take home and take by yourself and don't share with anyone. And if your kids are home, that's too bad. And don't have fun, and it's a bad thing, and the government's going to make money doing it. That's the new year for Ontario, apparently. So, anyway, Mike was having this great show, and I was lucky enough to be a guest on there. He wanted to hear about my story with what happened to me with cancer and getting out of it. And the next thing you know, the folks at Eggplant are asking me if I want to bring this show, and that's how we got Green Crush together. Now, if I could call the show How to Cure Your Cancer by Using Marijuana or Cannabis, I mean, that sounds terrible, right? First of all, I'm not saying you can cure it. What I'm saying is you can render your body into a state where the disease, so to speak, the problem, the mutations, the cells getting out of control are remedied by the fact that you no longer have a garden that supports that particular plant. So you're not really curing cancer. I've explained this on Coast to Coast. That's another great thing that happened to me this year. I was on a show, Coast to Coast. You can actually find the link for that. I know people pay for that. There's a paywall for that show, but there's also people that download everything in the world and put it on YouTube, and you can find it. It's out there, or you can, be a subscriber to Coast. It's another fascinating show that covers a plethora of topics, and mine was one of them. So after 3 million people chat on my birthday, which is November 5th, when I turn 55, to talk about stage 5, a lot of fives there. I like numbers. They keep track of things. While I was doing that on my birthday, I was also generating a lot of emails from people who were contacting me about what to do about their cancer and about their whatever might have happened to themselves or their aunt and their uncle and etc. And so on Coast to Coast, as a guest there under Richard Serrett, who was guest hosting for George Noory, Coast to Coast AM, you've heard of it. 3 million people listen to it all the time. And I was asked by so many people on email, because I gave out my email address. If you want to talk about that kind of thing, it's allencomic1@gmail.com. allencomic1@gmail.com. That'll get you, if you have a question or a concern or a doubt or an idea about using. Sorry for that. I just realized I was more off mic than I ought to be. This orange thing here. That kind of threw me off. Now can you hear me? There we go. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, this particular radio show generated for me so much listener mail, viewer mail, whatever you want to call it, if you're watching the show. And it put me in a position where I realize it's a very heavy situation, and any time to be a person that says, here's what you should do. Here's how you ought to handle your very severe medical situation. And I don't really know how to handle major medical situations. I don't claim any expertise on any of that. What I'm saying is that my expertise is based on, is about what I did to get me out of trouble. That's what my expertise. I have a doctorate. Okay, I have a deep research module, comprehensive degree on being told by an expert or two that I was certainly going to die. And I didn't like that phraseology. And you could call it denial if you want. But it's a denial of the prescription of you're going to die. The prognosis. Felt like a prescription. So I know how to get out of what I was in because I had to do it twice. And it wasn't easy either time. It was more scary the second time because I got much closer to the end the second time. But I also knew that a few things were out of whack with the system that I was using. And then some tweaks were made, and here I am with a show talking about it, because I can't talk about it to everybody one at a time at a coffee shop for 4 hours a pop. But it's really good information, and everybody should know how it works. So this is how I don't cure cancer. This is how I don't tell people what they should do. This is the phraseology that I am completely comfortable with, both in its intent and where it sits on the truth scale at the fucking top, thanks. And that's how I get to say that if someone contacts me to discuss whatever it is, I'm always willing to listen to the particular medical journey, whether the person has or has not had any of the traditional approaches of radiation and surgery and chemotherapy and different drugs. If they've gone that route, if they haven't gone that route, how severe is the cancer or the condition? Could be a lot of other conditions that it'll help with. if you use the tool properly. Like our governments insist that can't be done. Oh, it's dangerous. Yeah, so's a chainsaw. So's a surfboard. So are a lot of things if you only focus on a few aspects. So I'm trying to put together for you that I can just about ignore whatever the medical condition is, or I can listen to it because I'm interested, and I choose the latter. I am interested. I do want to hear how people are dealing with their dark days of illness. Because what I say is, well, if that were happening to me, everything that you say you're going through on your behalf, or maybe it's about your mother or your father or someone else, if that were happening to me, I would do this. And then I'll share with you what that is. And basically, get yourself over to phoenixtears.ca, www. For some of the older folks listening, Phoenix Tears, and that's PHOENIX for some of the younger folks listening. phoenixtears.ca. Get over there and find out everything that's written on that website is, to me, very important knowledge to have tucked into your brain, whether there's a game on tonight or not. Because at some point, you're going to need this knowledge. You're going to need it because this cancer rate that we're suffering is like 1 in 2 now. 1 in 2. So if you're not someone who gets it, you're going to know someone, or you already know someone that has it. And if you watch the video, Run from the Cure, and if you read all of the pages and understand them, and if you look up the word apoptosis, one of my favorite words, this is cellular suicide of the bad cancerous cells that are giving you your bad cancer time. Apoptosis, those cells will kill themselves. This is a happy suicide. When your cancer cells bail out on the environment of the body that no longer hosts these terrible dark cancer cells. Fun stuff. And scary as shit. But having been there twice and gotten back, see, after the first crash, I figured, oh God, this isn't working anymore. And I did so bail at that time on the premise that it was effective. I thought maybe it's not effective. Maybe it only lasted a little while, is what I thought. Now, what is this thing doing? Okay, I'm looking at my phone. It was telling me something. Siri came on and started to say things that I was saying, and of course got it wrong. And yeah, we're going to get to that. Don't worry. We are going to get to that. Listen, my clock stopped at 4:20. Now, that's weird shit. I don't know if anybody can see that. You can't see that thing. It doesn't matter. My little soundboard, when it was playing, but I had the slider faded down, and I just pressed stop at some point while I was explaining how I don't cure cancer to the folks and can't be charged with counseling people on how to do it. I'm just telling them how I would do it. That's all. With this track record, with these results of still being here. So that's my fun. But I was explaining to these people while I was on Coast to Coast, which is part of my big year, that this can be done, and a lot of those people are now looking at this information. Some of them have responded. Now, people get a hold of me at all kinds of stages, from 1 through to 4, and sometimes beyond that, unfortunately. And sometimes precancerous, they'll talk to me. So, I like that. Because I find out that I'm not the only one. I just happen to be one of the ones with the biggest mouth. So that's okay. That's what it's for. I've used it for a lot of different things in the course of my life, but if I can use this stupid fucking mouth as a megaphone to tell you folks how I would do it, based on the fact I was told I was going to die and now I didn't, so I must know something, even if I don't have a degree. Even if I don't. Here's what I don't know. I don't know how much time I want to spend on Canada in this show. Canada being the massive disappointment that it is. when you look at it, when you take your head out of the happiness that everybody thinks it is. It isn't really. This leader of ours was just banged 4 times, and I don't mean by whoever people. I mean by an ethics commission. He just got found guilty on 4 different counts, some of which included trying to influence a judge. The guy is the only sitting prime minister, and that's, when he's not taking a selfie with some tourist. He's the only sitting prime minister, and you would have thought Harper would have gone down for this last time. He's the only prime minister that's been popped for an ethics thing during a term. So, and he was stuttering and sputtering about it. Now, how is that related to the theme of the show? Well, he's a liar. That's how. He's a liar. He lies to about a lot of different things. And one of the biggest things he lies about is cannabis and its availability and etc. And it's true that he's got an investor whose name is Chuck Rafisi, who's well developed into the mainstream, what will be the mainstream of cannabis purveyance in Canada. He's a major investor into, and let's remember, these are groups of people that are going to do something that other people used to do before and have served or are serving jail terms for it. But now it's only illegal to those people suffering these punishments, and these other folks are going to flip the page and control the political scene and lay down a template of how they can make all the money on this cannabis legalization. Yeah, that's another use of language. We're going to have to spend some time on language this year because it's not legalization. It's legalization. Legalese. They've just taken a series of crazy, restrictive nonsense, wrapped it up in cop speak, and they're throwing it down on us. So in Canada this year, we're going to spend a little bit of time because I live here. It's inevitable. But like I said at the end of as we were winding down with 2017, I said, look, I don't want to talk about this anymore. It's embarrassing. I'd rather understand what other countries in the world are doing. So with that in mind, we're going to go to this Canada scene right now with BuzzFeed News from Justin Ling. Popped this out just after Christmas and before New Year's. He says, if all goes according to plan, Canada will be the first country in the world to set up a fully recreational marijuana market. Several U.S. states have created a legal system, and Uruguay legalized the drug. And we've got more news on who else is active with this in the show. Though it didn't set up any kind of legal market for people, Uruguay, to purchase it. Canada's experiment is a much bigger ordeal, and it's funny that phrase is there because as you're reading this online at BuzzFeed.com, right beside the phrase much bigger ordeal, there is the picture of one of the biggest ordeals I've ever come across is Liberal MP Bill Blair, former police chief of Toronto. And if you check his stock portfolio, I'm sure he's invested into this new paradigm somewhere. But for more than a year, Ottawa has been devising a plan of attack for how it will begin selling cannabis. I don't know if it's a plan of attack so much as a scam on how they are illegalizing it and have been illegalizing it for so many, the people that know how it works and what to do, and getting into it themselves when they've been shitting all over it as a concept, as a notion, as a lifestyle for decades. But I don't know why... words are important, right? I mean, you got to really understand this is all bullshit here. But it's being nice to Bill Blair, who is basically a pig at the trough. I mean, you're not supposed to use that, but I can't help it when it's true. Like I said, this is just going to be coming from truth. It ran its own consultations. This government hired a task force of experts to do their own study, which apparently the fact that they decriminalized it in Portugal, which is a country in the world that you'd want to study if you were putting together a new paradigm of laws, by the way. So you either did do it and ignore it, or you didn't do it and you're irresponsible. Which is it? Which of the two fucking things? When you looked at Portugal and you're giving this bullshit about how it's going to be more, kids are going to want it more. What about the children? We have a sound effect for that. It's really fun, but I'm by myself and our guest canceled. We'll get to that later. with 8 minutes before the show started. Second Californian in a row to do that, by the way. Going to have a problem with it because it's a lot of news down there, but if they don't have anyone to represent, then we're just going to draw our own conclusions. But for more than a year, Ottawa has been devising a plan of attack about how to sell cannabis. Okay, here's the plan of attack. You're my friend. Thanks for funding me into existence as the leader of the country. Now let's look at your family's template of rum running history back in the alcohol prohibition days when the Bronfman gang, Stephen of which is the big funder of the Liberal Party right now today, helped them get into position where they are right now to be able to unroll the old family template and lay it across the scene so those guys could make the money. And the rest of us could be told we're a bunch of criminals, and we're being told we're criminals by a prime minister that's just been spanked in office 4 times on ethics breaches. And he's calling us unethical. Okay. No, we're not going to be doing that. Oh, this rant and rave is sponsored by Boycott OCRC. OCRC. The Regulatory Control Board of Cannabis in Ontario, where a bunch of labor lackey union folks are going to be happy to have jobs just so they can keep up with the artificially fomented inflationary spiral. So they're going to want that job, but don't buy their shit. This is brought to you by Boycott OCRC, brought to you by correct thinking, fair-minded people everywhere. Boycott OCRC. And it doesn't surprise me that Kathleen Wynne of Ontario, the Premier, has created a thing that has RC in the title. Amazing. The rug does match the drapes. So we started our own consultations, and then we didn't realize that in Portugal, where everybody has access to it because there's no criminality there anymore, they just decriminalized it, not legalized it or legalized it to cause more busts than we had before over the same topic that they are now pretending is free access, but it isn't if people are going to go to jail. So you went to Portugal, sir, and everybody on the task force, let's have this drunk-looking guy, Bill Blair, come in and sit down right here and tell me all about it. Tell me all about how it's bullshit that in Portugal, where they legalized it, usage rates went down, people started to realize how it worked, and instead of allocating funds toward cops to punish people that either want to do something and have their own right, or they need help in being shown how not to do it, you know, like with all kinds of other substances that we do allow. So let's leave the hypocrisy at the door. I know that's tough when you used to shine a badge with your breath every day. But Billy, you really got to share with us how exactly it is that when they fully decriminalized it in Portugal, all of these predictions you make about how it's going to go up and how it's going to be more dangerous and how the black market's going to get out of control, when all of that doesn't happen, how the fuck do you justify that? Oh, yeah, you don't. So don't tell me you're running consultations and hiring a task force of experts to do their own study if you're not going to really share the data from the study and act accordingly, just so you can fatten your fucking wallets. If you're just joining us now, you're listening to the New Year's episode of Green Crush. Green Crush brought to you by disdain and dissent towards bullshit laws that control our lives. We'll be right back. Da-da-da-na-na-na-na-na. Here's the big question. Why is a former police chief in charge of taking the laws away from cannabis and cannabis possession? Here's the answer. By the way, we'll get to our guest a little bit later. She couldn't join us today because despite confirming yesterday, all of a sudden there was a doctor's appointment 8 minutes before we had to go to air. And California's on my mind. Hey, here's some of the new laws that we got going on right here in Canada. Look at this. Can you zoom in on that for a second? Take a look at that for a minute. Maybe you can do a freeze frame. It's kind of shitty printing. We'll just go like this. Put a little light on there. It's kind of shitty printing. Can we do that? Take a look at that thing. It's just a nice little primer. It's a primer. If you're now listening to this solely on iTunes, and thanks for listening to us on iTunes, by the way. That's good enough. Thanks for listening to us on iTunes, by the way, where you can leave a review of the show. It helps us a bunch. It helps us more than saying you'll come on and then not coming on, that's for sure. So, if you have public possession of the equivalent of more than 30 grams of dried cannabis, that is an indictable offense. We're rocking and rolling over here, Russell. Are you okay? Okay. Thumbs up. Okay, I'll stop moving. I should have been moving while you were doing that, like an old Star Trek episode. So, public possession of equivalent of more than 30 grams of, and I guess we're supposed to feel like this is a benevolent gesture in that an ounce is only 28.5 grams or something, and they're going to let us have 30. Isn't that sweet? Anyway, that's an indictable offense up to 5 years imprisonment. Hello, legalization. We're legalizing weed. Public possession of more than an ounce. And how many bottles of Jack Daniels can I carry around in my shopping buggy? Oh, as many as I fucking want. Oh, okay, cool. Possession of illicit cannabis. Well, you could also get up to 5 years imprisonment or a summary conviction offense up to 6 months imprisonment, a fine of up to $5,000, or a ticket for $200 plus a victim surcharge if it's less than 50 grams and less than 7 plants involved. Yeah. This is the new law system in Canada. What's this guy talking about? I'm talking about the new laws that are coming into Canada that are supposed to be shoved down our throats as being told that we are legalizing it, making it available to people. Oh man, I'd like to remind everybody this broadcast is brought to you by Grow as many fucking plants as you want. Grow as many fucking plants as you want. They're the plants that you want, and you want them. So those are the plants you're going to grow. And, let's get some ventilation companies together. Let's go full hardcore, because that is what they are calling for with this recriminalization of the laws. They're intensifying them. There were 7 or 8 laws. Now there's 45. This is the transition from available to not available to available again. Meanwhile, everybody making a profit on this is going to be the for-profit prison industries. The prison guards union, they got to be involved, right? You don't want people not going to jail for cannabis. If you're a prison guard, shit, you might have something else to do. You might have to bone up with a second job. If that's what you're doing. Hey, how about this? Public possession of budding, flowering cannabis plants is an indictable offense up to 5 years imprisonment. Or a summary conviction of up to 6 months imprisonment and a fine of up to $5,000 because you are in public possession of a budding or flowering plant. These people are trying to put their, what would I call it, human stamp on whether or not you can have a plant. Like, this is where it's at. This is a very comical. I hope if there were one person listening to this show who's never partaken of cannabis or thinks it's ridiculous or would never try, but is listening to this show because they can't believe someone would actually would speak its virtue, I just want to know what you have to say about if someone has a budding, this is a law, if someone has a budding or flowering cannabis plant, and Chuck Rafisi or Stephen Bronfman or Julian Fantino, the cop, or Bill Blair or Kathleen Wynne or the Attorney General of Ontario or any of these people think that they can put you in jail for 5 years for holding up this plant. Do you really think you should have a mental state where you think that's okay and you have to abide by this? Is this something that you're really invested in? Well, I can't, 29 grams, okay, 30 grams, but not 31 grams. Because maybe you'll go to jail for 5 years. Oh, my God. So people are drawing up laws like this. Not like this. These are the fucking laws. They're drawing them up. And I'm supposed to sit here and understand that, we just have to be thankful that this stuttering, ethics breaching, we already know we broke the ethics. Trudeau. We already know that. You know, back in January, he says, I can go to this trip. I can go on this vacation. We don't have a problem with that. And then he's found to have a problem with that. And he's not even ready to answer the question when Rosemary Barton asked him, what's that all about? How did you not imagine this could, he stuttered worse than George Bush. Very strange stuff to watch Justin just not have a handle on that. So the same people that didn't prepare him to answer the question are the same people that thought he wasn't breaching the ethics in the first place, and these are the same people that have designed a system that keep people in jail, tell other people like me and other folks that we can't use this plant the way we want to use it, while they make laws against it and profit from it at the same time. These folks are vampires almost, right? When you think about every single one of these levels, aside from what he says on TV. These are the facts at the end of the day. New 45 law system, really harsh penalties on a lot of these things. None of them are genuine offenses. Distribution of equivalent of more than 30 grams of dried cannabis, indictable offense up to 14 years imprisonment. Hey, it's legalization, up to 14 years. I know some of you might say, well, maybe he's only going to get 12 years. Maybe he's only going to get 10. Maybe he'll only get 10 years for giving someone an ounce of cannabis. These are the laws. I wish I was being ridiculous and making this up. These are the fucking laws here. Unauthorized procurement, which, by the way, I advocate. Unauthorized procurement, indictable offense, up to 14 years imprisonment. Or summary conviction offense, up to 6 months imprisonment, fine up to $5,000. That's a pretty big range, eh? $5,000 or 6 months imprisonment, or maybe 14 years imprisonment. Or a ticket for $200 plus a victim surcharge. Now, who is the victim in this? In this procurement fiasco? Are you going to tell me that the victim is the person who was hoping to run a monopoly on cannabis, and now you did it on the side, and they didn't get to tax you on that, and they didn't get to profit from that in a corporate sense, when they set the system up like that in the first place to do that? This is all true. Okay, this is all going on right now. I know you're going, okay, stop with these crazy, weird things you're saying about these harsh laws from East Germany back in the day. No. These are the new laws that are going to be coming into effect this year. And as our Prime Minister has already offered, there have been several interpretations that around this time last year, it was well believed that the legalization date was going to be 4/20, April 20th. That immediately got punted down the road to, no, it's going to be on July 1st, Canada Day. And then when that got close, they said, no, it's not going to be on July 1st, Canada Day this year. It's going to be July 1st, Canada Day next year, 2018. We went, oh, okay. And then so people are saying now, and the police, including them, are saying, how are we going to have anything ready in time? We're not ready for this. So even though the government said they prepared to get this done, the cops are sitting there going, no, we're not ready yet. We don't have all our machinery. We don't have all our testing equipment that we're going to arbitrarily use, even though it doesn't prove anything in the way of whether or not someone is under the influence and cannot drive. This isn't booze, folks. Each time they line it up as booze or as cigarettes, and then there's another leaky end of the story. Like you're not allowed to do it because, it's bad, it's poison like cigarettes, which you can smoke walking down the street. Well, can't do that with a joint, but still, they're the same. It's too much of this bullshit. Hey, let's pick another one of these. Distribution of budding, flowering cannabis plants. Hey, man, you know what you should do is you should juice this and drink it and take it in like a food. Here you go. Here's a plant. Oh, there's the handcuffs, and I'm doing 14 years. Right. These are all implausible and unworkable, okay? Possession, production, sale, distribution, or import of material used to produce, sell, or distribute illicit cannabis. So, that could be like material used to produce. That could be the soil. That could be a pot to put the soil in. Could be a Chinese food. chopstick that you're using to tie the plant off at the beginning, if that seems to be a good idea. I don't know much about growing, but we'll be having some growing people on to tell you how to grow your own plants so you don't have to worry about this bullshit. Unauthorized promotion. The false promotion. A prohibited publication. A prohibited inducement. A prohibited packaging, labeling. A prohibited display. Indictable offense, up to 3 years imprisonment. So we have to get Harrison Jordan back on the show. I'm talking to Danny now, my producer, who's with us. Happy New Year, Danny. Thanks for coming to the show today, unlike the other people that said they were going to be here. From California. Danny is here, and yeah, he's equally guilty with me for this unauthorized promotion of this cannabis that can so turn your life into a much better thing, like from having it taken away from you due to death and continuing to live right on through that shit like I'm doing right now. So I'm going to promote that, and that's authorized. So that's all I needed to do regarding unauthorized promotion was I needed to authorize it. Just like I need to authorize a check, just like I need to authorize any kind of credit card, just like I need to authorize any kind of thing by signing it, and if you don't sign it, you're not authorizing it. So I am going to sign a declaration that I am so authorized to promote this, thereby skipping past their indictable offense of up to 3 years imprisonment for falsely promoting it. Because I'm sure that when they get around to the point where they admit that they have been listening to the show, although ignoring it, they're going to probably want to try to do that. If they're sticking with their ways and means here, their charge of unauthorized promotion. I am promoting it. I am authorizing that I am promoting it. False promotion. I am not falsely promoting it. I am genuinely promoting it. I am not falsely promoting it. I am genuinely telling everyone what happened to me, how I got out of it using cannabis, which I will promote, and not falsely. So I'm getting lost in the even when it's so simple as false promotion. It's still legalese. So a prohibited publication. I'm making this news public. Are they going to shut this show down? Is this what net neutrality is all about? Are we going to have to fight to get this thing on the web? Because maybe I don't get an indictable offense of up to 3 years in imprisonment. Maybe I just get the summary conviction offense on my first offense for up to 6 months imprisonment and a fine up to $250,000. A subsequent offense of up to 18 months imprisonment and a fine of up to $500,000. These are the new laws, folks. Okay, I know it sounds like I'm making shit up. And you can also wind up getting an administrative penalty of up to $1 million per violation of these pieces of paper that they print based on nothing. Fun stuff. This is Green Crush. You're listening to the New Year's edition. May the good news of the new year come smiling your way. And all that really is to get informed. Now, I will, we got to put this thing up for people. Danny, we have to put this, I put it up on the screen so if folks are watching on YouTube, they might have been able to see it, but it is kind of blurry. And it is super important, and it's very condensed, and it's very easy to read. And I think people should make themselves familiar with the bullshit salad that is Canadian legalese. All right, let's move on to another topic. Shall we discuss the other shit that's going on in Canada? Yeah, okay. I'm going to see what Danny's been sending me pieces of information. He thinks I might not have enough shit to vent about while I talk about not having a guest today, but we are good. We were talking about Justin's, what else we have to do in Canada's, legalization efforts to get it right. So this is the finalizing the BuzzFeed article, okay, and just to get out of this thing, I want to put a button on it at the end. Okay, so there's Bill Blair again. God, it's sickening to be in here and just have to look at this guy, who is obviously drunk legislating and should be breath tested each and every time he goes in and out of the legislative assembly there, Parliament. Oh, great. So he says, but for all that, there is still criticism that the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government has been too skittish in rolling out its legalization plan, and a fear that his government is not fully prepared for the reality of what Canadian pot smokers want. That's a safe bet. BuzzFeed News called up Bill Blair and Toronto's pot czar, Trudeau's pot czar, the former Toronto police chief and current member of Parliament, to get his take whether Ottawa is ready for the challenges. And the biggest one being, do we have enough weed for this? Because Nevada, Colorado, and Washington, and now California, are experiencing shortages due to all kinds of reasons, from molds to fires that went through and damaged things. So, here's a great quote from Bill Blair. A recent report from Statistics Canada estimated that Canadians smoke roughly 700 tons of marijuana per year, and that's while the drug is criminalized. The Canadian government reported that medical marijuana producers, many of whom will pivot to join the recreational market, had roughly 25 tons of inventory as of this past July. So I don't want to make this about math, but we take in 700 tons a year, and they got 25 tons ready. And a whole whack of laws on the people that work their way around that shitty math of 675 missing tons. And you don't want us to grow our own, huh? Good God, these people are so stupid. And or sinister, I can never choose. Definitely one of them. Maybe a little bit of both. The Canadian government reported that medical marijuana producers, many of whom will pivot, had roughly 25 tons. So 675 missing tons. At the beginning of 2017, just a year ago, there were 37 companies licensed to grow, process, and distribute. Now there are 82. And that number is set to grow before legalization kicks in sometime this summer, says Justin Trudeau now. He says, I don't know where that July 1 day came from. I don't really know where that came from. Yeah, there's a lot of things he doesn't know. I mean, you wanted to think he had no ethics breaches, and then he found out that he did, and then it turns out he doesn't even know what day he said he was going to make this stuff available. So where are we going to get this? It depends on where you live, etc. That's going to be a bit of a difficult issue, where you're going to get it in Canada. But let's move on to another more interesting topic. In BC, the highest court. Now, BC, we're still in Canada here. This is British Columbia, and BC has some of the finest bud in the world. And I'm sure there are people there that would get upset with me for saying some. They have a fantastic availability there. Beautiful BC. It says here in thestraight.com that BC's highest court rejects the mandatory minimum sentence for a marijuana grower. Philip Francis McGee didn't deny he was a partner in a grow-op with more than 600 marijuana plants in his Surrey rental home. 600 plants, folks. When it came time to be sentenced in 2016, BC Supreme Court Justice Terence Schultz accepted evidence that McGee likely received $20,000 per crop. The RCMP told the court that the two previous crops had been grown by the time McGee was busted in 2013. But Schultz refused to impose the mandatory minimum prison sentence of 3 years on the 60-year-old who had no prior criminal convictions. According to Schultz's ruling, this violated Section 12 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So why you want to make a series of laws that would violate Section 12 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms only for this guy to have his life ruined, while then eventually the judge that's higher up the ranks than the police in the judicial system is going to lay this shit down? This is something we all need to know. So what is Section 12 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms? And if we can get a drum roll, please. No? Okay. Section 12 of, just kidding. Section 12 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is everyone Now let's take a look around the room. Is there someone who feels they might not be everyone? The marginalized cannabis user that has to go out into the alleyway to smoke a joint while he's at a cocktail party downtown? Right. Everyone has the right not to be subjected to any, that's a heavy word, 3 letters, any cruel and unusual treatment or punishment. Section 12, folks. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Hang on to that. Because there's a deeper morass that shows that even that particular Charter of Rights and Freedoms might not be the ticket to get out of this mess. But right now, there's a judge in BC saying that under Section 12 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, a guy who was selling something that now only the government wants to sell and profit from, and they'll tell everyone else they're a criminal, a guy that sold that stuff and knows how to do it better than they do, if he's got 600 of them in a friggin' rental house, I'd be tapping that guy for his expertise, dummies. A guy like that is not going to have the mandatory sentence come down from a judge when the judge realizes Section 12 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is everyone, including people that like to enjoy cannabis, whether they're taking it medicinally or whether they're taking it recreationally, it doesn't matter. We don't need fucking laws around it when under Section 12 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, you idiots, we're allowed to use this stuff. It's just a plant. I don't care about your unions. I don't care about your wages. I don't care about you'll need to lay cops off if you're genuinely decriminalizing. Like the cops in Portugal that have to wander around and figure out other shit to do that's of value rather than impinging the rights of someone enjoying a plant. Whether you like that or not. Police chief of Edmonton who says, we don't understand how complicated it's going to be. It doesn't need to be complicated. It needs to be people understanding that this is all bullshit. And when you go to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and you know what, our friends in different countries that are listening now, in New Zealand and Australia and Germany, I'm sure you guys have something similar to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. All these kinds of laws that have come down in our similar commonwealth under the Queen state has a similar thing. So if you have one, include it and shoot it over to here. I want to read about your particular Charter of Rights and Freedoms that's going to give you some kind of thing that says something like this. Number 12, everyone has the right to not be subjected to any cruel and unusual treatment or punishment. And if you're going to put a guy in jail for using or having 31 grams or 32 grams, maybe even 35 grams of a substance, you don't get to put him in jail because of Section 12 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which says everyone has the right to not be subjected to any cruel and unusual treatment or punishment. And on that note, if we can finally stop putting pictures of Bill Blair in the paper every time there's an article when he says something, okay? Because we don't need that either. That's kind of unusual punishment right there. So, instead, the judge imposed a 10-month sentence. Isn't that nice of him? There shouldn't have been any kind of thing. He's not going to give him the mandatory one, though. He's just going to go to jail for 10 months. And if he's a good boy at 60, maybe he'll get out in 3 or 4 months. Isn't that cool? For doing something like having... This is so stupid. I'm just saying the same thing over and over again. Are you realizing this? I'm realizing, and it makes me sick. Why is anybody listening to this? This is like a nightmare for me. It's so fucking obvious. According to Schultz's ruling, this violated Section 12. So he gives him a 10-month sentence. And today, a 3-judge, this is back in whenever the hell, it doesn't matter. Back in December 28th, a couple days ago. A 3-judge BC Court of Appeal. This is how they were spending their Christmas. Today, a 3-judge BC Court of Appeal panel upheld that earlier BC Supreme Court ruling that a 3-year sentence for growing more than 500 plants violates the charter. So if this guy's not even going to do the maximum sentence and they're only going to give him 10 months for having all those plants, more than 500, and you want to grow 4 or 6 or 8 or 10, You help yourself to that. I want to see the court cases where people have a dozen plants, 6 plants, 10 plants, 25 fucking plants, or like my prescription, up to 49 plants. According to what a doctor who doesn't even believe in a lot of this stuff, most of it. And I like this guy. Not the first guy. I talked about the first guy. You'll hear about him later. But the guy that I'm working with now, I'll be seeing him tomorrow. He gave me a prescription, and it breaks down to I think it's 25 plants. Anyway, but I'm only allowed 4. This guy's doing 500 plants plus, and they're punking down his punishment. I'm sorry, I'm popping my peas here. They're punking down his punishment from 3-year maximum mandatory. He says, no, I'm not going to violate Section 12 of that charter to appease some cop that's upset about the fact that the weed this guy's growing is not going to fatten his wallet. A 3-judge BC Court of Appeal panel. The panel in the BC's highest court declared that Section 72, blah, 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 all this and that, 2BVVV, are declared to be inconsistent with Section 12 of the Charter. So those are Sections 72.2, points B and V, and Sections 72.2, points B and VI are declared inconsistent with the Charter. That means that no one with more than 500 plants who's charged in BC will face this mandatory minimum sentence unless the ruling is overturned. You know, and there's always room for that, right? There's always room for some guy to try to change the law, right? Like they're doing right now. This means that no one with more than 500 plants. So you can go ahead and grow as many plants as you want, and I'm saying this to create a resistance, to create an OCRC boycott, a government weed boycott, a Julian Fantino Alefia company of weed purveyors boycott. We do have Alefia, Aleafia, they're trying to flourish right now. This guy helming them is not Bill Blair. He's another former police chief of Toronto who is profiting now, or so he thinks, from selling cannabis. And I say that the socially conscious of us that still want to use this stuff will not be buying it from Aleafia. I don't recommend any large-end purveyor, especially when they can only muster up 25 tons and we take in 700 tons. Figure it out. But Aleafia is definitely on the garbage list. No rotund officer who's profited and put people in jail can turn around and say, oh, yeah, I didn't realize it was as good as it is, and now I do, so I'm going to make money on it. Everybody you busted could have said the same thing and did. So this segment brought to you by the anti-commercial of Aleafia. Aleafia, run by a cop and another cop. Don't let them profit on your backs. It's not ethical. You'll lose sleep at night. Ban Aleafia, now also available at the OCRC, which intellectually and spiritually and morally you should not walk inside. So Mr. McGee completed his 10-month sentence. And in this particular Judge Sonny Stromberg-Stein, I can't believe there's not Shia in front of that. Justice Shia Sonny Stromberg-Stein. In my view, this sentence is at the very low end of the range suggested in the case authorities. A very minimum. A 12 to 15-month sentence should have been imposed in the circumstances in this case where Mr. McGee, a principal in an illegal grow operation, dun, 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 with more than 500 plants, rendered a rental house uninhabitable in order to profit from the illegal production of marijuana and has made no restitution to the innocent property owners. Now, that does suck. But even so, they're giving this guy the break. So that means if you're decent and honest about it and you have proper ventilation, you just grow as many plants as you want to grow. That's what this boils down to. That's the way I see it. And that's because I'm looking at it through the correct end of the telescope. So thanks, Judge. Sorry you didn't get to kick him as hard as you wanted to, the other judge. So our guest today from California is like our other guest today from California, who bailed on us at the last minute, and then now this one has done the same thing, and they're both from California, so I don't know if we're going to book anybody from California on the show again unless we know they're cool. Apparently a doctor's appointment was involved, and I understand those are very important, but that's why when I have a doctor's appointment, I don't confirm another thing at that same time. So let's go to the article, and you'll know why I wanted to have her on the show. Her name is Cheryl Shuman. She is known as the Cannabis Queen of Beverly Hills. Cannabis Queen of Beverly Hills. I'll give her the introduction that I was going to give her had she been able to maintain the contractual agreement. Verbal, but still. She's been seen in the New York Times, Seattle Hemp Fest, ABC's trifecta of The View 2020 and Good Morning America, The Ricky Lake Show, CNN's Piers Morgan Show. God, I'm glad that's gone. Dr. Phil Show, Katie Couric, CNBC, BBC World, Fox Business News, Fusion TV, Adweek, Vice, Al Jazeera, and all over the place, really. And so we were fortunate enough, I guess, to land us someone of such a stature. The Beverly Hills Cannabis Queen, America's First Lady of Cannabis, the Martha Stewart of marijuana, a celebrity of the industry who has helped turn the mainstream spotlight on this powerful industry. Which is true, and I agree with this. She has been involved in launching 1,700 cannabis businesses. We're not going to count them all, but I'm fascinated to understand what some of those were. Maybe another time. She oversees a cannabis investment fund with Jacobs Securities. She was hired by Seneca leader Ross John to assist in developing economic cannabis business models for Native peoples, something I really wanted to talk about. And she also has endured cancer and PTSD, something else I really wanted to talk about. So she is now, she's been all over the place. She had a major car accident that required multiple reconstructive plastic surgeries to save her eye, rebuild her nose and jaw, and resurface the scars on her face, which she says she is still self-conscious of, and but she has rehabilitated herself beyond that and was able to use cannabis, and this made her form something called the Beverly Hills Cannabis Club, a not-for-profit gardening and patient collective with 2,000 members. And she has a 68-acre farm in Northern California with a greenhouse and a main house that acts as a country club-type gathering place. The BHCC, once again, that's the Beverly Hills Cannabis Club, has private bungalows for guests, a delivery service, and mansion parties. But she is trying to build a luxury brand around cannabis. And, after surviving cancer, she felt it was her personal obligation and duty to rebrand cannabis for the mainstream. That's her mission. So it's a fascinating one. And I'm sure we'll hear about it sometime, whenever it is convenient. Let's say that she is, that's what I really wanted to get to was in her New York Times article, it talks about how she uses marijuana for a variety of medical conditions. And this is something that's interesting to me because my expertise, as I say, self-claimed, self-proclaimed, is in dealing with my cancer in my way. So I want to hear how she deals with hypertension and also a benign mass on her liver. And also how she begins each day with a power smoothie of marijuana, wheatgrass, and vegetables. I'd like to know the recipe for that. And you can use a male plant, I'm sure. She ingests the drug regularly via a vaporizer and seasons her food with it as well. So we had a lot of things in common, and I hope to at some point, I hope it's understandable that I'm being real in the moment. I'm not exactly thrilled with a last-minute cancellation, particularly from a Californian, because the last guys that did that were supposed to be on the 19th show. And I wanted to talk about stuff like, as California legalizes, which is yesterday, laws collide at U.S. checkpoints. Maybe one of our guests could shed a little light on this. So instead of that, I'm going to go to leafly.com and tell you that in Pine Valley, California, this is where this story was filed by the Associated Press. Mainstream stuff here, folks. California legalizes marijuana for recreational use Monday, but that won't stop federal agents from seizing the drug, even in tiny amounts, on busy freeways and backcountry highways. What is wrong with these folks? Marijuana possession will still be prohibited at 8 border guard patrol checkpoints in California, a reminder that state and federal laws collide when it comes to cannabis. This is all from the minds of the people that proclaim lucidity. It's not a problem that the cannabis folks have pushed hard enough to bring their controlled substance to the fore and not be treated as criminals. It's up to these people to figure out why they're so full of shit now. Marijuana possession still prohibited at 8 checkpoints. The U.S. government classifies marijuana as a controlled substance like heroin and LSD. Prior to Jan 1, it's going to be the same as after Jan 1 because nothing changed on our end, said Ryan Yamasaki, an assistant chief of the Border Patrol's San Diego sector. If you're a federal law enforcement agency, you uphold federal laws. So I guess that system doesn't work, huh? The checkpoints, located up to 100 miles from Mexico, are considered a final line of defense against immigrants who elude agents at the border. They've also been a trap for U.S. citizens carrying drugs, even tiny bags of marijuana. You've got a tiny bag of marijuana? Off to jail with you, sir. This is how fucked up this is. The Border Patrol operates 34 permanent checkpoints along the Mexican border and an additional 103 tactical stops. Typically cones and signs that appear for brief periods. So basically, you can have it in California if you like, as long as you don't have it in California. Meanwhile, some states put a THC limit on pot-smoking drivers. Here's why California doesn't do that. This is an article that came out on New Year's Eve 2017 in the San Francisco Chronicle. Mainstream news, folks. Melanie Brinegar. Anyway, smelled of marijuana, so a Colorado police officer asked her to get out of the vehicle. A Colorado. Like, what do you need? We're using this now. Get out of here. So a Colorado police officer asked her to get out of her vehicle. On the one-legged stand, a routine part of field sobriety tests, she lost her balance after 28 seconds. When she needed to go 30, a drug recognition evaluation that included looking at her vital signs went worse. Then a blood analysis showed she had 19 nanograms per milliliter of THC in her system, several times the 5 nanogram threshold of the psychoactive ingredient marijuana that a Colorado jury could use to infer she was impaired behind the wheel. But she wasn't, a jury found. She was acquitted of driving under the influence after her 2014 arrest when her attorney, Colin McCallan, successfully argued she was not impaired. Brinegar, oh God, I hope that's her name, was initially pulled over for driving with an expired license tag, not for a moving violation. It was a routine traffic stop until an officer detected the medical marijuana she took that morning to ease the pain of her degenerative disc disease. They had no viable proof. She wasn't weaving. She didn't miss a turn signal. Cases like hers highlight why California will not set a THC level limit for determining marijuana DUIs when pot legalization laws take full effect. Did you study that here in Canada? Yes, you did. What did you think about it? You're not saying. Unlike the nationally accepted 0.08% blood alcohol concentration limit, used in DUIs, there's no scientific consensus on a base blood level of THC that can prove impairment. Hello. Can you just say that again? Yes. Unlike, once again, they want to compare it to alcohol, in certain measures of control, but as soon as it's completely different on the readings of freedom, then when they go, well, yeah, we're just going to ignore that. We're going to charge you anyway. Unlike the nationally accepted 0.08% blood alcohol concentration limit used in DUI arrests, there's no scientific consensus on a base blood level of THC that can prove impairment. And now we go back to the 45 new Canadian laws, and there's your circle of bullshit, just completely forming like the rings of Saturn, just all the detritus spinning around. And like the rings of Saturn, there's a reason for all this. Some of that has to do with the worship of Saturn. But there is no proof. This isn't alcohol. And they have to stop acting as though they know what they're talking about when they don't. And imposing these series of strictures on us when they shouldn't. And making up things that aren't true to imprison us for profit and control. This is not a free country, folks. Not here. And not in any country that is saying things of that nature, of that controlling nature. So let's just skip over to the Business Insider, and we're going to hit a few places of where you can smoke weed in different jurisdictions. Okay? Because before we get to that, let's also note that we have with us now some new countries that we're paying attention to beyond this ridiculous Canadian scenario. And officers running things. Good God. The spreadsheets say that if you really decriminalize cannabis, you're not going to need as many cops. You're not going to need as many, you just won't. You won't need as many man hours. So they don't want that. The idea is set that at every year the police budget increases and we need to hire more cops, not the other way around. So we got to rejig the spreadsheet to make sure that's the way it's going to be. So Mexico is legalizing marijuana for marijuana-based medicines, foods, drinks, cosmetics, and other products early this year, bringing some forms of cannabis into legal commerce even as the country struggles with the illicit drug trade. Mexico legalized the use of marijuana for medical and scientific needs in June, but has maintained a ban on recreational use and cultivation. But a spokesman for the health regulator, COFEPRIS, said the agency plans to formally publish the regulation for pot-based goods within days. That's probably already happened. And they're trying to curb drug trafficking down there, and they're still going to do this moving ahead with legalizing it. So this is where it's going. We'll be fascinated to hear their particular take on it later, on their government spin. Here's where you can legally smoke weed in 2018. Oh, what else happened in 2017 that was a big deal? Yeah, they kept kicking down the road the legalization date in Canada. That's another thing that happened. This is the New Year's episode. As we draw to a close, the United States is becoming the land of the red, white, and green, says here in Business Insider. So here's a summary of where Americans can legally light up. In Alaska, adults over 21 can light up there. It's the northernmost state. I guess it's not going to get into the lungs of everybody in the lower hemisphere. They can transport up to an ounce of marijuana, which is about a sandwich bag full, for recreational use. So go to Alaska, northern exposure. California, the first state to legalize medical marijuana in 1996, became even more pot-friendly last year when it made legal to use and carry up to an ounce. But that doesn't mean all Californians will be able to buy it at the stroke of midnight. So, and the state rules dictate in California, this is hilarious, that they will not be selling it between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Like most stores aren't open at that time either, but it's just extra funny that, of course, they don't sell booze at that hour in Canada. But I know they're trying to make this thing make as much sense as possible. And meanwhile, everybody's got different rules. In Colorado, of course, there are more dispensaries than Starbucks and McDonald's combined. How can that be a bad thing? They were on board in 2012. Maine. A ballot initiative gave Mainers the right to possess up to 2.5 ounces. Oh, my gosh. All of a sudden, that's more than we can have by 2.5 times. Maine Governor Paul LePage dealt a major blow to the industry in November when he vetoed a bill that would have regulated and taxed the sale of recreational marijuana. The Portland Press-Herald reported that the lawmakers are meeting with him to propose a new framework. You're not listening, buddy. You're missing out on the money, is what they're going to tell him. And in Massachusetts, and in Nevada, and in Oregon. And Oregon, we're going to have another episode where we will talk further about what's going on elsewhere in the world as we scour the planet for guests who have a better attendance record than our Californian friends. Okay, so we're going to skip on out of here. I left you with a lot of information, and all you need to do is listen to it again, but slow down the recording or stop it when you need to. I know it's a lot to take in. But we are having our lives controlled by these folks, and they should definitely not be doing that. We have to change our perception of what people are telling us we can and cannot do, particularly when the reasons are usually nefarious. Anytime it's going to cut into your freedom, it's nefarious. So that is the New Year's episode for Green Crush. We will return next week with episode number 23.